"So you going to tell me who Marty is and what he wanted?" "He works with Democratic Republic magazine in New York and wanted to offer me a job," Jason said very anxiously. "That's great and definitely something to go after, but why did he call all of a sudden? We didn't have any warning something like this was coming, no clue." "Marty called because they had been talking about the water park story around the newsroom and wanted to speak with the no-name reporter who broke the story. He said because I had special witness testimony and uncovered a conspiracy complete with payoffs and illegal workers, he wanted me to work for them. Apparently nobody anywhere was able to get the quality interviews that I did. Little old me, working for a cheap nothing paper, got a bigger scoop than the bigwigs with all their fancy equipment, foreign bureaus, research, and assumed best education money could buy." Jason outscooped the big boys. Then they dropped the story because their corporate overlords wouldn't let them spell out the truth. Jason and Christina walked over to sit at the table. Both of them were pretty long-winded when they were passionate about something. "So, what would you like to do?" Christina asked Jason, genuinely wanting to know the answer. "I want to take it, of course. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. They offered me lots of money, a corner office, creative and editorial autonomy. Basically everything a reporter dreams of. And I can do any stories I want," Jason said excitedly. "The only thing is they want me to move to New York and work out of the main office." Christina was having a hard time finding the words to accurately portray what she wanted to say. "New York, huh? That's a long way from here. You know I'm locked into working for Shane Corp, right? You might say I'm working my way up in the field that is my passion. If I want to be a forensic scientist, I have to pay my dues, and the company I work for is the way to do that." "I know you can't leave. In fact, you shouldn't for all the reasons you just stated. That's what makes this decision so difficult. On one hand, I could take a job that is a surefire gateway into the halls of power. I'll be able to uncover truths that hold us as a society back. On the other hand, I could stay with the only woman I've ever truly loved and continue to work for a small paper, discovering truth in whatever way I could," Jason said if he just unloaded something that weighed on his mind for years, which really had only been a couple minutes since he hung up the phone. Christina sat in her chair and leaned back. Then she got up for a glass of water as she became extremely parched all of a sudden. "I think you have to go after your dream. I'd never forgive myself if you stayed," Christina said as tears welled up in her eyes. She filled a glass with water from the sink, took a big gulp before she spoke again. "You're also the only man I've ever truly loved. You taught me so much in the short time we've been together. You supported me through all my trials and tribulations, and the fact you were completely and utterly behind me when I took the Shane Court lab job showed you honestly care what happens to me in my life." Christina took another gulp of water before setting her cup by the sink and sitting back down. The sun was starting to pour in the window now, which was one of the things she and Jason always loved about their place, especially now they could use all the warming energy they could get. "I love you, Christina. I love the fact you're a truth seer just like me, but from a different angle. I love that you go after what's swept under the rug because you genuinely care and truly want to make the world a better place for all its present and future inhabitants," Jason said with a glow in his eyes, thinking about the beautiful woman sitting in front of him. "I know you do, which is why you have to take this job. Let me prove the love that has kept us together. We both care about what happens to the planet. Our love for each other is designed and built on the idea that we help each other grow and achieve much more in the furtherance of collective evolution than we ever could by ourselves." That's the first section. The next section that I'm going to read from is a little farther into the story. Jason's first day on the job in New York, and he's in his first morning meeting with his new boss, Marty. If Jason was ever interested in taking down the powerful, the people who beat the system, or in some cases built the system so they could beat it, then now was the time. Was he ready to do it instead of endlessly dreaming about it? Could he take the step that would advance him towards what he wanted to accomplish big picture? "You ever heard of the people in Congress who do insider trading?" said Marty, trying to test Jason's knowledge, but also testing the waters for the story he was going to pitch. "Yeah, I've heard of them. Pretty much called all of Congress. Let's not forget the Senate, too. Judges, lawyers, everyone in Washington seems to work by their own set of rules," Jason said as he felt his energy grow. "That's for sure. They all do stuff that would send me or you to jail in a heartbeat. If the person with all the gold writes down the rules, then the person who makes the gold available is the one who creates the rules," said Marty, feeling like he was getting on one of his soapboxes. "What's your point?" Jason said, very eager to see what Marty was building to. I got wind of a new scam that some Congress people are pulling. They take information that gets disseminated and make as much money off it as they can. That doesn't sound new to me. They do that all the time, probably every day of the week. Right. But the difference this time is what they're doing with the information. Okay, so what are they doing with it? They're taking and making a lot of money off of it, of course. Then when no more can be squeezed out without people catching wind, they start these shell companies. Well, not really shell companies in the usual sense of being a front for the CIA or something, no. This shell company is just a means of creating information. And that way they get the inside information from the inside, cranking it out like their own personal ATM. Jason sat there for a minute just trying to absorb before he spoke. That's crazy, but not totally unexpected. Greed knows no boundaries. So is this something they all do? Or is this leading towards one individual we might have the opportunity to go after because you figured out their weak spot? This is just stuff I've noticed for a while. After the market crash and all the crazy radicals made their way into the Capitol, the gloves are off. What do you mean the gloves are off? I mean the rule book is being thrown out the window and new plans are being explored. Jason took a deep breath as Marty continued. I've hit up some of my best sources, and as expected, this is something that's always happened. Except now, corrupt politicians want to do things out in the open because their egos have grown so big. To do it on the grand scale they want, they have to expand their reach. But with everybody having a camera in their pocket and the internet being everywhere, they had to rephrase it. So instead of calling it insider information, they call it tips they found because they did their homework. Instead of stealing information, they are gaining ground on their enemy that wants the entire system to fall. Instead of stealing what would land any person in federal prison for many years, they say they're only being smart about where the world is going and don't want the money to fall into the wrong hands. So it's a classic example of doublespeak, them saying one thing but doing another. Jason looked up at Marty and saw that he was nodding in agreement. They really are making this world a little more like 1984 every day, huh? Certainly seems like it, Marty said, with fright about where the world was headed, but excitement that the young, intelligent, and passionate young man sitting across from him was getting when he was throwing down. So I guess I'll ask again, what do you want me to do with this? I want to see what you can dig up. Now is the time to test your journalistic skills and see what you can discover. I know you're new to the city and it can take a while to build up trustworthy contacts, but I want to see what you can do. That water park story was one thing, but we're talking about corruption on a global scale that will bleed this planet dry. I'm up for that. Sounds like quite the challenge. I've been waiting my whole life for an opportunity like this to take somebody down that deserved it. Thank you. I will not let you down. I know you won't, because that's the kind of person you are. Just keep me updated on what you find and when you think you have material to print. We'll give you as much time as you need, but we also want to make sure this isn't going on forever without you finding anything. Just keep me in the loop. I will, Marty, thanks. And thank you for everything. The limo from the airport, the place to live, which is amazing and better than I ever imagined, and this job. This is what I've dreamed of since I was little. So again, thank you. So the next part I'm going to read from. Jason and his new partner, Bryan, have traced insider trading to an anti-immigrant rally, and they're now interviewing their first person there. Hey, I'm Jason, and I'm here reporting so more people hear about the cause and what they can do about it. I was wondering if you'd like to make any comments, Jason said to the clean-cut man behind him who was wearing a suit despite dirty tennis shoes. Yeah, I'm here because immigration has gotten out of control. This place will just let anybody in and say, hey, come here and live, take our benefits, use our schools and our hospitals, drive on our roads, but don't pay any taxes, or vote in our elections, or even have decent American traditions. They don't know what it's like to make a real and honest living. They don't know what a hard day of work is like, said the man aching to express himself. Bryan looked at Jason like, here we go. He knew Jason would go off on this guy by how strong his opinions were when they were talking amongst themselves in his office in the car. He was worried Jason would mess the whole thing up and they'd have to go back to square one. This was Jason's first real test as a reporter, to see if he could handle people in a professional manner to get at the heart of an issue, and the real reason he would even think of coming to a rally like this in the first place. Is there a way we could fix this problem? Something we could do to teach them the American way of life? Jason said, leading the man on. He felt the secret to taking right-wingers down in verbal combat was just letting them talk. They would eventually say something to disprove the point they just made. Basically, the conversational version of set it and forget it. We could build a wall with gun turrets and a moat along the whole length of the border. We could even plant landmines, but none of that would work. They would just find some other way in. We have to stop them. We have to throw out politicians that don't want to push any meaningful security measures through. They're the lousy pinko commies that want to let anybody in with no rules and let it be a free-for-all. You think crime is bad now? Just wait and see what happens if we keep sitting on our hands. See what happens if we keep having politicians say they want to stop illegal immigration, but then turn around and do nothing. They are the real problem. They are the real people we need to get rid of. Why do Congress people say illegals are a bad thing? Then when they have a chance to do something about it, they don't. What are they hiding, and why and where are they hiding it? Jason thought it was mighty interesting somebody on the complete opposite end of the political spectrum as him could probably agree with him a lot more than he thought. It's amazing what can be seen when you get to the root of what's wrong. This guy wants to take a politician down because he isn't tough on immigration when he says he will be. Jason wants to take the guy down because he supports illegal immigration when it keeps his fields and factories filled with cheap labor and makes him more money. Not to mention insider trade with the information of where people are and the best way to hide them and put them to work. They might come from two different places and might think of the world as two different locations, but on this, they might come together. Was this the key to the whole thing? Could people come together when they see that their end goals are basically the same by virtue of being human? Could they see that what they want is the same and what they think they want has fogged over their critical thinking skills? Well, thank you for your thoughts, sir, and I agree something has to be done about senators and congressmen who say one thing and do another. It's poisoning the whole political landscape, but the more people like you that ask questions and get to the root of what nobody wants to talk about, the better off we'll all be. See you in there, said Jason as he waved at the guy who waved back and then disappeared into the building. So, the last section I'm going to read from, Jason and Bryan met up after the rally with Jason's old friend Aaron that he hadn't seen in many years, who happened to be speaking there, and they're all having drinks at the bar afterwards. I think this lady is keeping me here for some reason. I don't know why, I just feel like something is going on. Remember me talking about that congressman at the rally and how he told me about that guy he turned down? Said Aaron, knowing how vague it sounded, so he tried to clear himself up immediately. Just as Aaron was about to open his mouth, a hand tapped him on the shoulder, making him jump out of his pants like something out of a Dr. Seuss story. Fancy seeing you here, Aaron. This isn't your usual watering hole, is it? Mind if I sit? Asked the confident man in a dark suit as he sat down like he owned the place, making all the guys uncomfortable but intrigued at the same time. I know you from somewhere, don't I? And how would you know this isn't my usual place for a drink? Asked Aaron, wondering if the guy had been following him or was just a jerk. Come on, man. You can't be that drunk already, said the man as he looked right at Jason with an evil eye that inferred this chance meeting was no chance. I know who you are now. You're the guy at that rally that was going to speak after me. You're that congressman, Mark Rydell, said Aaron as he cautiously put out his hand to see if the congressman would shake it. Yes, I am. Sorry you got thrown out. I told him they shouldn't have done that. You never know who he's going to run to for help, the congressman said as he continued to glare at Jason like he was going to choke him with the Jedi mind meld. Yeah, what was that about? I thought you and I were on the same page. We both want to make change, or is it something else? Do you have other interests? Aaron said to Rydell, yearning for a path to the truth. Well, it is true that we should stop all illegals from coming here. We are a country of laws, and we have to abide by them, or we're left with chaos. We can't just go around doing and saying whatever we want. It could hurt somebody, make them look very bad to the people they work for. Couldn't imagine what that feels like, said Rydell, whose face was getting red with the anger building inside him towards Jason. What's your point, man, and why are you staring at Jason like you want to ice screw him to death? Said Aaron, trying to regain his confidence and manhood that floated away when Rydell sat down at their table. My point is that I don't like interrupting my busy schedule to talk to little pissants like you about what they should and shouldn't be doing. I have so much more important stuff to deal with than sit here and talk to you in this pit. Stop poking a hornet's nest. You never know what you'll find. You'll never discover what you're looking for because we're so much bigger than you and have all the power and influence. What do you have, some cheap beer and whiskey? Please, said Rydell, who was getting angrier the longer he sat at the table. So you were the one that had me thrown out? You want to beat me up right here? Are you tough enough to get into an old-fashioned bar fight? Don't come in here and threaten me. Nobody threatens me. I'd love to knock you down a peg, take you off that high horse you're sitting on, said Aaron as his own anger was building. You think I've made it this far in the game without being able to handle someone like you? Said Rydell as his anger disappeared and the unyielding coolness he walked in with returned. All I'm saying is watch your back. Whenever you're walking down the street and feel a breeze, think about me nipping at your heels. Think about me knocking you down a few pegs from the lowly place you're already at. I should actually thank you for working hard and making me so much money. All my friends and I have had exotic vacations and truckloads of cash bestowed upon us because people like you have to provide for your families. You'll put up with whatever crap pay or working conditions we put you through. Just keep working, worker bee. You can't do anything. You can't risk your own survival to enter this fight. You'll lose, and you know it. Come at us if you want, but only if you feel like leaving this earth. Just remember, there's a lot easier ways to kill yourself. Rydell didn't take his eyes off Jason the whole time he was sitting there, and after he felt he made his point, he got up and walked away. See y'all, and don't forget to vote in November. So I'd like to open up any questions, comments, any thoughts people have. Go ahead, please.
So, your series of books, are they going to follow the same storyline, or do you envision kind of a different mystery that he'll be looking at in each book?
Probably more closer to that. Towards the end of the book, I definitely leave it open, and you can kind of tell that sequels are going to come after that. And I kind of lay the groundwork for the next one, because each successive book, there's going to be 6 more after this, is going to be dealing with a different thing like you're talking about. And I don't want to go too much into it because it'll give away the end of the story. But yes, that was definitely in the planning. Now the structure, I guess, of the book would be a little bit different because I spent all a good portion of the book setting up the backstory of the characters, where they came from, Jason and Christina's relationship, how they met, all that stuff, and I don't get into the meat of the good story till not that the rest of it's not good, but the meat of the actual story, probably 100 pages or so into the book. So that's what's exciting about the next book, and each one after that is I can just get right into it.
Yeah.
And try to do my best to do one of those really. I'm not going to try to compare my stuff to James Bond, but James Bond movies always have that 15-minute opening scene that just, after 15 minutes, you might want to watch it. You probably want to watch the rest of the movie after you see, a motorcycle chase on top of a roof.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So, yeah, it's definitely going to follow somewhat of a formula, but it'll change a little bit. Yeah.
So how about some clues to I haven't read, he won't let me see anything yet, on the rough draft. Because this was like illegal immigration and insider trading sort of thread through it. Now the next one, can you give a little?
It's going to deal more with water issues, desalinization, privatization of water systems to control populations, to control food growth, to just all the things it can go through. Cuba and Detroit are going to be the 2 places. It starts in Cuba. The new one starts in Cuba. So that'll be interesting. I need to do a little more research on some, authentic. There's a name for because they're starting to open up the economy a little bit down there. But there's a name for these they weren't really privately held restaurants because you weren't really able to hold private businesses there. But there's a name for these small restaurants that were almost ran out of people's houses, and they'd have a half a dozen tables in there, and they were about the only kind of private business that they'd be allowed to hold there. So I need to look up things like that and just some names and stuff. But I'd definitely love to go there, and her travel's starting to be lifted a little bit, so that's nice. So it's it'll be cool. My character in this book has a thing for Cuban sandwiches. And that's, almost his comfort food whenever he does something crazy or has to make himself feel better if he's sad or upset, and eating to comfort yourself. I mean, I'm sure that's relatable to a lot of people, but it's good. And so it's just his thing that always makes him feel better. There's probably 10 scenes at least in the book where he's eating Cuban sandwiches. And there was actually, I guess they're closed now. Someone told me at one of the previous meetings there was a Puerto Rican restaurant in Eureka that was open for only about a year, I guess. It's closed down now. Mostly Puerto Rican food, but they made Cuban sandwiches there. So as I was going through the editing process of the last book, it was just all these synchronicities like, oh, this place serves Cuban sandwiches. Oh, there's that movie Chef that came out with Jon Favreau where he works the food truck and he's a chef and they make Cuban sandwiches. It just kept coming like, it was just really just... and I guess that's one of the big things about the book too, is just about following synchronicities, kind of putting yourself in the right place in the right time without knowing it's the right place in the right time. You're driving down the road and, I feel like pulling over here at this exact moment to just, it's a random spot. But because you went to that spot, you run into somebody. Because that person you ran into just happens to know this other person that leads you to here, and I know that's just how life can be sometimes. And so I think I use that just to make it a little more relatable to, people going through life. I found the more I pay attention to them, the better, the more conscious and more clear stuff appears in front of me. So,
Right.
yeah.
Were these characters based on someone you met?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, like any writer, they pull stuff from their own life. I mean, Jason's probably modeled after me. I mean, really. Christina's probably modeled on the woman that I've always wanted to meet. Aaron was an old friend of mine from back home who I haven't talked to. Almost like putting him into the book.
Which was another synchronicity, because you hadn't talked to him in all those years, and then that Facebook thing you did, and he contacted him. And he's actually his characters in the book.
Nowhere, all these friends that I hadn't talked to or seen in like 10, 15 years just started sending me friend requests out of nowhere, out of the blue. And then him, I was hoping we could, talk a little bit more, but I'm sure that, people have their lives and, he's married and has kids and, it's good for him. But it was just interesting to have him contact me after he played kind of an integral part in the, in the story. So, which is interesting because I also put one of my other old friends into the new story. So, again, it's just pulling from stuff that that I know. Also, going through the book, people that know me especially, will be certain events that happen, maybe a quote or something that I say, I'd be like, oh, that's him. I make I'm a line about my mom's matzo ball soup, or just something my dad said when I was younger, or something. So it's fun. I'm able to get some of that stuff out. So it's cool. I enjoy it. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna pull up Marco Rubio real quick. Hold on.
But you got to reach very far over, though.
Oh yeah, sorry, way over here. Yeah. Oh, he's that senator. He was doing the GOP response to some speech Obama did like a year ago. Yeah. And then like in the middle of talking, he grabbed water like a minute later.
It was
Yeah.
super sweaty because the lights were really close.
Yeah. I mean, it was just funny, the whole thing,
Because they replayed it like 1,000 times,
Oh, yeah.
at least, on every comedy show ever.
Which was probably more interesting than the words he actually said.
Yeah, right.
That's, neither here nor there. Before I start getting off on a soapbox, it's just interesting, and I think that's one of the big things that I try to talk about in the writing, and one thing that really pushed me to put this stuff out there was just all the hypocrisy that's out there. I mean, there's so much wrong that people know is wrong, and everybody knows is wrong, and people can agree on with, but for some reason, there's something stopping us, and I mean, I guess I've mentioned it. Yeah, I mentioned it before. It's like I feel like there's this whole huge, like we could probably all agree on about 90% of things, everything. But there's this 10% of stuff that kind of keeps us from, coming together. And we say, oh, well, because we can't, agree on this 10% of things, we can't get to this whole huge area where we agree on. So I guess, my ending goal, or what I'd like to accomplish, what I try to do through writing just conversations, talking to people, is try to flip that. Try to see where we can start from this whole huge area we agree on, and then maybe once we're, used to talking to each other like humans again, maybe we have a fighting chance at some of these issues. The first few books I did, they were kind of, short little journal entries. You can randomly flip through, read a couple, dealing with different social political subjects, kind of intellectual ranting, I like to think of it. I've had some admitted very, very conservative people read it and like what I have to say because they know what I'm trying to say. They know I'm trying to poke through all this stuff, and even them, I've had great conversations with conservatives that once all the BS goes away and all the politics, and you talk about what's actually happening, you can actually get somewhere. So,
and what's brilliant about putting all of those hard to talk about topics into a fictional book is that I think the brain, once it starts getting into a story, I think it relaxes, I think your defenses go down.
Sure.
You don't realize that you're taking in all of these really heavy opinions, and people will process this information in a different way than if they're reading something that they know right off the bat is going to be an opinionated book. So
exactly.
you're going to reach a lot more people, I think, through this avenue.
I mean, I've always loved satire. I hate to bring it up. Well, I don't really hate to bring it up. I hate to bring up anything, but A Modest Proposal, I brought it up to friends of mine, and it was just a story written by Jonathan Swift in the 1700s. He was like a well-known satirist back then, and the story was pretty gruesome if you take it like what the actual subject is, but it was basically to see how ridiculous you could get with an argument to have people actually still buy it, and especially back, 300 years ago, when people thought that, every bad thing that happened in the world was because of the devil, but it's so you can reach a lot of people, and I really like that because yes, you make them laugh, you come to their kind of relatable side, and then kind of throw in those little bits here and there, and then they're like, while they're already on your side, you're like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't think about that. That was pretty cool, so, and yeah, I guess in the end, that's what's reached me too, with stuff like that.
I find that it helps to dispel the fear that we're governed by fear. And so we will see something happen and just not pay attention to it. It's like, we're powerless to do anything about that. That's why they want control of the internet, is because people are starting to find a voice.
Oh yeah.
And
which is
it's like
exactly. I love to bring up the example of, and I've talked about it to friends. Some people remember the commercials from the 90s, and some don't. Net Zero was one of the old internet companies, kind of around when Earthlink and stuff was around. When they first came out, all their commercials were like the internet. They didn't charge anything. They purposely didn't charge anything because they said the internet should be free for everybody. And their commercials were basically a guy standing up in a courtroom or at a protest. It should be free for the people. And then a year later, they started charging $10 a month like everybody else. And I'm like, what happened to that? What happened to this power to the people kind of thing? I don't know. So that was interesting, but it's, just another means of controlling information. But then it's weird at the same time, with all the technology and all the Facebook and all this other stuff going on, it makes it a lot easier for them to control people's information. Everything's online, all this stuff. But it also gives the people a better chance of coming together and doing the same thing. So it's almost like this test of human nature. Can we handle something like this? There was a great movie that came out probably 10 or 15 years ago called Sphere. Basically, it was this alien thing that came down from the sky and landed in the ocean. They were all investigating because it landed on the bottom of the ocean. And basically it granted people's wildest dreams come true, but it also made their craziest nightmares come true at the same time.
Polarities.
Yeah. And so it was really cool. The whole movie was basically about, that all this great stuff would happen, and then they'd be attacked by, 50 giant lizards or something or whatever. And then basically at the end of the movie, the thing, they didn't know why. They were all in a deep pressure thing coming back up to the surface, and the thing just all of a sudden compacted itself and shot back up into the sky. And it was almost the moral of the story where something like that could be very useful to a society, but the people weren't ready for it. Because they were, like you're saying, governed by fear.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. It can ruin somebody.
Yeah.
And so, I guess dispelling, coming out with information, the truth, love,